A lot of times, historically, what churches have done is churches have said, oh, wouldn't it be great to feed these people, or wouldn't it be great to do this program? And the recipients go, that isn't really what we need. So true discipleship, true service is really responding, listening to the stories of our neighbors, being in relationship with them, and from that, serving them as equals in the eyes of God. So I want to welcome you. I want to ask you to listen well. And there will be a time for questions afterwards. So be thinking about what you would like to know a little bit more about. And we'll do this each week through the month, and then we'll have some good conversation as a congregation. So let me welcome Robert and Tanya. Or are you working? Jordan, you're welcome to come up and talk to me. All right, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for inviting us here this morning again. My name is Robert Parson. I'm the City Councilman of Ward Number 8. You guys are smack dab in the middle of Ward Number 8. I'm here with my lovely wife, Tanya. And we are here to respond to our invitation from Brian, one of our neighbors down the street, who graciously asked us to be here today, so I thank him for that. I'm going to go ahead and be a gentleman and allow my wife to go first and say what she needs to say. She is going to introduce herself, let you know what she does in the community, and then I'll go second. Okay? Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Again, as my husband said, that we were invited by the Kennedys, Brian Kennedy and his lovely wife Samantha, and we were given the task to answer the following questions: who is your neighbor? What is your role in the community? And what is a concern that you have for the Florissant North County community? And what strengths have you encountered? So that was I did a lot of contemplating and trying to think about how I was really going to address you all. So the first thing is, what is a neighbor? Well, a neighbor is a person living near or next to you. So if you think about the community, you got Hazelwood, you got City of Alton, you got St. Charles, right? So that's the community or our neighbors. Amen?
Amen.
I got my teacher voice on. In Galatians 5:14, in the King James Version, it states, "For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Well, how can you show love to your neighbor? Some of us don't even love ourselves. So you have to know who you are in order to be able to fulfill who your neighbor is. All right?
Yes.
So, who am I? I am a daughter born by James and Gwendolyn Wood in February 1970. I spent my upbringing in two different households. I was brought up by my grandmother and my mother, a single parent at that time, because she got divorced from my dad when I was 3. So I grew up with an education that was probably not like some of you all had an education. My mom wanted the best for me, so she sent me to all of these various schools, where I was probably one of the few of my color. So that brought about some diversity. Then, when I was 13, my dad decided that he wanted to take custody of me and raise me. So, where I went from one school where I was predominantly a minority and made wonderful grades, I now had to come to another city in Tennessee, and same thing. Predominantly white school, but my grades weren't so great. And the reason is because of the schooling. Now that's why Common Core is in place for minority families and military families, and so that we can all collectively be on the same page. So here I am now. I received an associate's degree from Rome State Community College in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then I came up here to move to St. Louis to go to school. Yeah, to get away from my stepmom. So that's where I met my lovely husband of 24 years next month.
Woo!
We met at St. Louis University. university, and so not only my daughter, I'm a wife, and I'm a mother of 3. Our oldest is 22. She just graduated from Washington University with a degree in cognitive neural studies and brain science. Woo! Yeah. Our other daughter, she's 20, and she is a WashU student as well. She is going into bilingual studies. And then, of course, you see our son, Jordan, who's stuck with us for a little while longer, who's 12 years old, and he goes to Steam Middle Academy. All of those things afforded me to be able to be as diverse as I can be. So, not only am I a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an elementary school teacher. I will be entering my 17th year of teaching right here in this community, and I didn't think I believe I recognized your face, at Commons Lane Elementary School, where I have taught the whole 17 years. I have taught 3rd grade for 10 years. I've taught 1st grade for 6 years, and I've taught 2nd grade for 1 year. So, I believe I do recognize you. I believe your daughter went there. Can't remember her name. I didn't have the fortunate to teach her, but I think I do remember your face. So, when I grew up, I struggled with school. Only because, like I said, there was that shift from going from a school in Chattanooga and then moving with my dad in Knoxville. So it was a little bit of a power struggle, and I struggled with getting to know who I was. Because my stepmom would say, "You don't know anything. So who are your neighbors?" This is me. I'm also a youth minister. And I've been a youth minister for the last 4 years at People United for Christ Church, where 8803 Cousins Avenue, where Pastor Lindsay Watkins is our leader. They chose me as a youth minister, I guess, because of my teaching. And I tried to get with the students. You all are all students, no matter what your age is. So I tried to give you the word in a teachable way. That's who your neighbor is. Prior to COVID, people would see me in stores, and they would ask me, which cap am I going to put on today? Are you going to wear the teacher's cap and talk to me about my child in school? Or are you going to do other things? So I try to just be normal, whatever that looks like, and talk to them, whether it's as a teacher or parent to parent, mom to mom. The concerns that I have for North County community is probably the same concerns that you have. What are we going to do with our children? There's no place for them to play. When I was growing up, you could go outside, don't come back into the street lights come on. You can't do that anymore. They need a place to play. They need a good quality education. We shouldn't have to go way across town to do the same things that our neighborhood community schools should be doing. I have the same concerns that you have. I want my children to grow up knowing who their friends are and not being afraid to go across the street or into the grocery store to find something that mom sent to the store to get. While I didn't give my entire back history, I want you, one of the things was your strengths that you've encountered. Some people would say that my strengths are more like a weakness, but I didn't consider it a weakness. I considered everything a strength. Vulnerability is a strength. Self-reflection is a strength. My skin color, believe it or not, is a strength. Don't let people tell you that you can't succeed because of the size, your color, your age. All of those are your strengths. So we've all encountered them. I want you to think about who your neighbor is. In my neighborhood, where the Kennedys live, Next door, we have a neighbor who has 2 big dogs. And he's aware that my son, and we are, afraid of those 2 big dogs. But like many of you, you don't want your child to be stuck in the room or stuck in the house all day playing video games. Is what it is. So he wants to go out every now and then and play basketball in his basketball hoop. That neighbor knows us well enough to know, hey, let me put my 2 dogs up so your son can get a few hours or a little bit of time to play basketball. Yeah. You need to know who your neighbors are. We got a neighbor who's across the street, who's a foster mom. And I couldn't figure out at first why all these different cars are going back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes her children are long term. Sometimes they're short term. Know who your neighbors are. They're foster parents. Our other neighbor lives next door to us, and when she throws parties, from time to time she'll ask us, you're welcome to come and jump in our pool. Know who your neighbors are. Our other neighbor, they live down the street on the corner. And they have 2 little children. And they don't mind that the other neighbor jumps the fence and plays on their equipment where their children play. Know who your neighbors are. And then we have the Kennedys. You gotta love the Kennedys, right? Do you? I do. Good. I did not know for the longest. I'm always shopping. My husband probably tell you she shops for me too. Okay, so I'm always shopping. So packages are coming like every other day, every day. Doesn't matter. You need to get paid by UPS.
I know. It's
And
not UPS, it's FedEx.
Right, and FedEx. What I didn't know was that this one particular store would always drop off packages at the Kennedys. I didn't know until she came one day with the package and said, hey, I know you've been looking for this, but did you know that for almost a year now your packages have been coming to my house? I didn't know.
Because we just quietly
They just
walk
walked
down the
out
doors and leave us on the porch.
Never knew. Those are your neighbors. You need a neighborhood, just like you need a retirement investment plan. I'm saying this because in about 6 years, I'm going to retire. Your neighborhood should reflect your retirement portfolio. What do you mean? You need growing assets. You need maturing assets. You do moderate investments. And you do aggressive investments. So what am I saying? Your neighborhood, your neighbors need to be diversified. That's all I have.
We need snaps just for that beautiful pink outfit as well.
We can all give another shorthand for my lovely wife. Yeah, it's definitely a hard act to follow. I'm so blessed to have her in my life, and as she mentioned, it'll be 24 years in August, so it doesn't really seem that long, at least from my perspective. She probably thinks it's long. But you know, we met in college, and we've just been great together ever since then. So, but let's get on to the reason why I'm here. Again, my name is Robert Parson. I am the City Councilman for Ward Number 8 here in Florissant, which everybody always asks, what is Ward Number 8? Actually kind of changes every time there's a census, but overall it just encompasses Waterford to Durhake, down to Parker Road, and now it goes all the way to, and I have trouble saying the name of the street, is it Hialeah? Hialeah. It includes this church, also includes McClure North, the Egan Center, Parker Road Elementary, Commons Lane Elementary School. So that's all Ward Number 8, in case you wanted to know. It's probably more than what you wanted to know about Ward Number 8. Okay, but in addition to that, I am also an attorney. I've been practicing law in private practice for 20 years now. So I get to meet a lot of people, learn different perspectives. My main areas of practice are probate law, family law, and I do like traffic stuff and some criminal, not as much as what I used to. Also, I enjoy being a youth coach. I do a lot of youth coaching for St. Rose. I've coached my daughter when she was younger. She's now 20. But I coached just about every year on her softball and soccer team since she was in the first grade. I now coach my son. He is playing basketball and soccer. So it's been about 12 years that I've done all of that. So I really like the competitiveness of the youth and letting them see and grow within themselves, have that confidence within themselves. And I think sports really teaches them that a lot growing up. So the last thing, I am a deacon at People United for Christ Church in Jennings. My pastor, his name is Willie J. Watkins. He is actually my uncle. My wife, of course, she's a youth minister there. My mother, she is a minister there. We are a family church. We've been in existence for 25 years, I think, this year. So we've been around a lot in that community. Now, I want to follow all of the questions that Reverend Mary Haggerty gave us. So I'm going to try to go to each question one by one. First, she said, "What's my role in the community?" I think I covered it. So let's go to number 2. It says, "What is your concern to live in the Florissant North County community?" We talked about a lot about education. Of course, a lot of that is near to my heart because my wife is an educator at Commons Lane Elementary. So I am concerned about the decline in some of our schools here in the Florissant area. And how that I kind of tie that into my law practices. When I'm doing family law and I do custody cases, school districts are a big point of contention when people want to have custody. When all things are equal in terms of mom versus dad, who's going to be the primary custodian for mailing and educational purposes often comes down to what school district you live in. I had a deposition on Friday. My client lives here in this area in Ferguson, Florissant, is a significant other or ex-significant other. She lives in Chesterfield. So the school districts are different. She's in Parkway. He's in Ferguson, Florissant. The judge is probably going to say, well, she lives in a better school district. She's probably going to have primary custody. So that needs to be a change here in the city of Florissant. If we want our communities to grow, if we want people to say, our young families that are having children, if they want to choose this area to live in, we have to have better schools. So it needs to be a community effort. You guys reaching out to people and bringing me here, that's a great start to try and do that. We need to make sure that our schools have the tools that they need for our students to be successful. I'm going to come back to that here later at the end. I have an announcement to make, so I'm not going to go into that. My other concerns about the community is attracting new businesses to the area. Florissant, we don't have a shortage of restaurants that come, which is sort of a privilege in one sense, but it's kind of a negative in another sense. A lot of other communities would be begging to see people come and make application to the city, to their city, to have their small business operate a restaurant. We don't have a problem with that, but we do have a problem with getting businesses like technology businesses, professional services, just other businesses other than restaurants that would make this community grow, that would attract more jobs. We know that a long time ago we had the auto industry here in the area in Hazelwood, and that supplied a lot of people who wanted to live here in this area because they didn't have far to go in terms of where they needed to go to work. But unfortunately, that is not an option here anymore. The auto plant closed down, and there had to be some changes made. So we need to do some things in our city government to attract more businesses so that younger people will want to choose this area to live. Also, we need more housing opportunities. I know we're kind of landlocked in Florissant, and a lot of our houses were built in maybe like the 60s or 70s. So new development with our housing would be something that is great. The problem is in order for us to get new housing, some of the old housing has to go, and that's costly. New developers don't want to have to tear down buildings and build new buildings because it costs them too much to do that. They would rather choose an area that is already vacant, like in St. Charles or what have you, so that they can do some new development and it would be less cost for them. So those are a couple of the concerns that I have and some of the challenges that this city of North County as a whole faces. Next, what streets have I encountered? So my wife discussed diversity earlier, and the city of Florissant is a diverse community, and I believe that is a strength that we have that a lot of other communities do not have.
Absolutely.
As of the last census, we have about 50% of our community is Caucasian, about 40% is African American, and then we have the Hispanic and the Asian community that make up the remaining 10%. A lot of communities in our surrounding area don't have that type of mix. I like to see, whenever we have our parades and our Hispanic festival, we have our Irish festival, we have a good mix of community here that I think is a strength that other people can't see or don't see. And I think if we can continue to come together as a community, that we will continue to strive and continue to grow. The other thing that I see as a strength in our community is we have a lot of activities and we support our senior citizens well here in the city of Florissant. If you look at that Florissant spotlight instead of just throwing it in the trash, you will see that all of the activities that our senior citizens have available to them.
I'm actually super jealous.
Super
when
jealous.
I see it. What about
When can I be a senior, right?
Right? When am I a senior?
Yeah, so there's a lot of activities, but they have a New Year's Eve party, which I think is great. That instead of celebrating at midnight, they celebrate at noon that day. So it's always in the evening center, and all of our senior citizens love it. Last New Year's Eve party, they were celebrating the Roaring 20s, so people came in their outfits and they were dancing to the music, and it was just a joy for me to watch all that occur at the Egan Center. And then the clock struck 12 at noon, and I don't think any of them made it to midnight that night because they had already made it by noon that day. And let's see. All right, next, how would you answer the question, who is my neighbor? Now, I came in here with a plan to talk about a certain scripture on who is my neighbor. And Reverend Mary Haggerty so eloquently spoke about what I was going to speak on earlier here today. So now I'm just like, well, do I just go ahead and just kind of repeat what she said, or do I pivot and do something a little bit different? I don't know how to really follow that act. So I'm just going to briefly just state the main points that I plan to talk about. Of course, I'm talking about the parable of the Good Samaritan. And I'll just go specifically to Luke chapter 10, verse 29, which says, "But he, willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, and who is my neighbor?" Now, of course, this is some smart aleck lawyer asking this question. I know, I'm in a profession. There's a lot of us. Okay. So there's a lot of us like that. I understand. So, but Jesus had previously told him, you have to love your neighbor as yourself. But this lawyer, he's trying to see if there's anybody that he can particularly exclude as one of his neighbors. Because sometimes there's just people you just do not want to deal with. It might be somebody in your family, might be, somebody down the street, and you're asking yourself, do I really have to show love to that person? The answer, of course, is yes. It doesn't matter who that person is, it doesn't matter what they look like. Doesn't matter what they smell like. Doesn't matter if they have short hair, long hair, what color they are. You are supposed to show love to your neighbor no matter what. And, I'm going to go into an example of an instance where there was some neighborly love that my daughter and I were able to show in one instance. Now, I'm not just saying this just because I want to be boastful about what I've done in the past, but one day I was coaching my daughter's soccer team. I think she was about in the 6th grade at that time. And there were kids that, of course, were sharing the field at St. Rose. There were kids that were playing on the playground and what have you. And then it gets to be about 8 o'clock and it's getting dark. And I'm making sure that all of my players have left the field. And then we're about to leave. And then all of a sudden, I'm hearing some child crying. And I look at my daughter and I say, did you hear that? And she said, yes. And we're hearing this little girl, and she's like in some bushes on the field, crying, just crying her eyes out, and she's by herself. And I was looking around, there were no other parents that were left there. Now, I do remember seeing the child playing on the playground because it's attractive to children, of course. We went to this little girl and we talked with her, and I asked her what her name was. Unfortunately, I'm getting older, I don't remember what her name was at this time. But she told me her name. I asked her where she lived. She didn't know where she lived. I asked her what her mom's name was. Mom, of course. So it's like, of course, what I did, thank God for cell phones. I called the police come out, we wait till they get there, and luckily they give me a call later. They were able to find the child's parents and were able to take the child home. But my thoughts is what if that was, one of my daughters that was lost in those bushes? What if it was someone other than someone like myself that came about and saw this little girl and wanted to do something nefarious in that situation? Unfortunately, we have people who take advantage in those situations. We got the human trafficking that's going on. We've got, the people who are child molesters. So all these terrible things were possibilities for that little girl that day. But I just believe that God placed me and my daughter there in a position and a purpose so that we could help that little girl at that particular time. Because the only thing she wanted to do was go play with some other kids and play on the playground. I don't know how she got out of her home. I don't know, if she was just playing in the background and just wandered off, but that's besides the point. We wanted to make sure that this little girl was safe and that she was taken care of on that day. So thank God we were able to accomplish that on that day. But in terms of being a good Samaritan, and I'm briefly going to talk over what Reverend Mary Haggerty stated. There was a man that was stripped of all his belongings, and he was left half dead on his way from Jerusalem to Jericho. A priest passed by, a Levite passed by, and only a Samaritan had compassion for this man. He bound his wounds, he picked him up, and he took care of him, and by taking him to an inn, and he was not really expecting anything in return. And to me, that's what I think being a neighbor is, kind of means to me. When you're doing something for your neighbor, it's not because you want to expect something in return from them. You want to do them because you want to be nice and you want to support them, because that's what a community looks like to me. So when I have announcements that I make at our council meetings sometimes, and I call it the Florissant Five. My wife just basically said what the Florissant Five meant here earlier today. We were trying not to step on each other's toes, but that's okay. I'm already doing it for Reverend Harry. So but what I consider a Florissant Five is I encourage people in our community to reach out to your 5 neighbors directly in your area. So that means you've got, on normal people not normal people. Those houses have, you have a neighbor to your right, a neighbor to your left, and then you have a neighbor directly across the street from you, and then you have one diagonally to your right and diagonally to your left. So those are 5 households that you need to get to know. I know often we really get caught up in going to work, and we might see our neighbors, we'll wave at them, and then we just go on inside our garage or in our front door and go out about our lives. But we need to reach out to these people so that we can care for each other as a community. So other than just doing that wave, why don't you stop sometimes and speak to your neighbor? If it's somebody that has newly moved in to your area, go across the street, introduce yourself, and say hello. Obviously, my wife knows our neighbors pretty well. We both made it a point to try to reach out to at least those 5 people. Now, me being a councilman, of course, I know a lot more than just the 5 people in my general area, because every 3 years, I'm knocking on everybody's door in Ward number 8, campaigning. So, but if we can all make it a point to go ahead and reach out to those 5 people, I'm not only asking for 5 households, then that would make this community better as a whole. And then lastly, I mentioned there was something that I was going to come back to in terms of doing a community event. I am planning on having an Adopt the School event on August the 20th of this year. That's a tentative, I don't really know the time yet. The tentative time is about 11 o'clock. And what I'm doing along with the Prince Hall Masons is that we are going to be collecting school supplies for Commons Lane Elementary and for Parker Road Elementary, probably from like 11 to 1 o'clock on those days. Both of those principals have given me the okay to be on their campuses so that we could collect supplies that day and that we can distribute it to the schools on that day. Now, the purpose behind me doing this, as you know, my wife is an elementary school teacher. At the beginning of the school year, everybody's all in collecting school supplies and bringing school supplies. You got a list of school supplies. But what we don't know is when it gets to be about February or March of next year, those teachers don't have any more school supplies left. So we need to make sure that our students have the tools that they need to be successful, which goes back to the education part of it. If you don't have a pencil, how are you going to take your test correctly? If you don't have hand sanitizer now, you know that gets used a lot now too. We have to have those things, and those teachers need to have those things so that they can make sure that all they're focusing on is teaching their students so that they can be greater and reach their greatest potential. So, I mean, if you guys want to participate on that event on that day, feel free to reach out to me. You know, it doesn't have to be anything great. We're just looking at the elementary school students, the Parker and Commons Lane Elementary, it's their pre-K to 2nd grade. So we're only looking at the real basics if anybody wants to contribute on those days. I tend to do a lot of my promotion on social media, so if you're on social media, you can see that. But I want to make sure that our teachers are supported, that our educational system here is supported, that our teachers are not coming out of their own pocket to try to buy things for our students. We as a community, if we're going to grow and if we're going to show progress, we need to support our educational system. Again, that's the grassroots part of it, so that we can attract new families, and so this area can continue to be better. So, other than that, I think that's about all that I have to say. I know there's a question and answer period here too. I can bring up Ms. Parson if you need to ask her some questions. But
I just wanted to ask you about this event. Will that then be done again later in the year, or are you thinking you will collect enough to give?
Well, whenever I do this, I have to have permission from the school districts and the principals. So if I do it later in the year, it would probably be, of course, when it's kind of warm out, because I don't want to have my volunteers. They're not going to want to be out there in January. So my goal is just, because there's always other events too. So I'm just trying to supplement what people are already doing, so that maybe we can stockpile a lot of the supplies that they already have in addition to that. So maybe they're not running out at the end of the year like they typically do.
Can you share with me your social media? Do you have a flyer or something? And can I share it on our page?
Yeah, that's fine. What is it? Robert Parson, Green for Ward 8. I don't even know. I'm sorry. It's Ward 8, Robert Parson Jr. Okay, let's see. Robert Parson, Ward 8, Florissant. That's it.
Okay, I'll find it. Thank you.
We've heard of, at one of our committee meetings, one mentioned something called Donor's Choice. Was that it? Is that what you were, Donor's Choice, and you can go, like it has teachers post like, hey, I need supplies for this and that project, and you can give money personally to support, is that right?
Yeah, I discovered it last year, and I found it really fascinating because they zoned in on the fact that I live in the North County area. So they send in things from the school teachers at Commons Lane and Park Road and others that have certain projects, and it's gonna cost $700. They're asking for donations, and then you can watch it and see if they get to the donation. And then you get a comment back from the teacher, thanking you or showing you what's going on. And some of the ones lately, the teachers have been asking for hand sanitizers, masks, other things for the children that are just such basic needs. I mean, Kleenex, paper towels, things that you would think that should be supplied are done. You know, you think that there should be money for the schools that supplies that kind of thing. There have been additional things like different seating for children who can't sit still and things like that. They need special lighting for those kids and things. And there are even things like the music teacher, Connor Evans, had a project for rhythm instruments.
That's how our district made most of our, that's how we get most of our instruments is through Donor's Choice.
Is that Tanya, that's something you've seen?
So
I've done that in the past. It is, it's a lot of work, believe it or not, on the teacher's end.
Okay.
But when it's written, we would love for those donations to come in, but it is a lot of work on the teacher's end.
Gotcha.
So, but once we do that, then, you know, you can go like, Ms. Mary said, okay, like Ms. Mary said, you can, you know, once that teacher's written, the proposal or the grant, then you can go and specifically put those donations there.
Okay, so it's legit and helpful once the teacher gets
Absolutely.
a lot of the work done. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool. All right. That's what I was curious about.
Okay, Brian.
I just was curious to know at the level of how school districts get funded to be able to have the resources that they have, whether it's part of the person, how, at what point in government would you focus on change to make, say, Ferguson Florissant have more resources, increase their budget if that's what it means, or increase their.
Well, unfortunately, their budget is dependent upon our tax dollars. So, I mean, what our housing values help determine what those taxes are. And believe me, people don't like new taxes. People don't want to be taxed on this new pool that we're trying to pass here recently. So, you know, which I think is a caveat here. I think is necessary for our community to continue to attract younger families. We need something for our youth to be able to do. And unfortunately, our pools have exceeded their life expectancy. An outdoor pool is only typically good for about 20 years. Banger Park pool is at about 25 years right now. If we don't get a new pool, because Coke is already gone, it was hemorrhaging water up at about 50,000 gallons of water a day, so we had to tear that one down. If we don't have plans for a new pool at Banger and add a new one at Coke, then we're not going to have a pool to attract young families and have young people something to do in this area. The other part of this is that the reason why people are asking, we just voted on this in April, why are we doing it again in August? It's because the timetable plays a factor in all of this. We are asking for a bond issue, which requires 57% of the community to approve of that bond issue. And when we apply for this bond, it has to be done based upon the rate of interest that the United States has. And you know, the Federal Reserve, they raise the interest rates whenever inflation grows. Right now, inflation is growing. So, ultimately in April, it would cost every household $34 per year to have this new pool. Anybody that has a house about $150,000, it would be a 34% increase in your property tax. if you want this new pool. But with inflation rising, if we wait until next year,
$34 or 34%?
$34.
Oh.
Right, a lot of people, I know people, $34 is more than anybody sometimes wants to pay. But we're only talking about $34 over the course of a year for this bond issue, okay? But some people, don't even want to pay that. So, and I understand, times are hard right now, it's difficult. And, that's only a half a tank of gas right now. But so I understand that we have our challenges, but if we want to think long-term about what's best for our community, we have to make sure that we have things that are going to attract young families to help sustain us. So that's one of those things. If we wait from August until a year down the line or 2 years down the line, it's not going to be $34 a year that we'll pay anymore. It'll be more than that. It might be $100. It might exceed that. So that's the urgency from having this election on Prop A in April to now in August. And it's not that we're just trying to shove it down everybody's throats. And lastly, if it doesn't pass in August, we totally understand we'll go basically based upon what the community wants. But we're likely not gonna revisit that issue, so we just probably won't have a pool here in the city of Florissant.
Can I just make a comment?
Go ahead.
I heard you say school budgets are based on property taxes.
Yes. Real estate taxes, I misspoke. Real estate taxes.
Okay,
Yeah,
but I just want to say that again, because I don't think we think about that. You all heard several years ago about Normandy School District, was unaccredited, falling apart. And that's why you'll hear me say, politics are not off the radar for us as Christians. It is essential that we know what's going on. That's why I so appreciate you coming to speak, because especially at the local level, that's where it starts. And so, everyone is free. I would never say this is what you have to do. We're all free to make our choice. But if we are truly bringing our faith into the public square, we got to say, hang on a minute, how does that make any sense that public education is funded through property taxes? So Ladue has the absolute top, and
then they keep attracting the money
and have textbooks that are not up to date. So, I'll get off my soapbox, but I think.
No, Mary, you keep going.
No, what I noticed is you said that, and that's like a big thing. And then we were talking, and so I wanted to say, wow, stop that. You just said that one little bombshell thing. It's something to think about. So.
I'm glad you emphasized that.
Who is my neighbor is the question. That's the question. Who is my neighbor? We got to think about it. Okay.
And a lot of times people are saying, well, I'm retired now, I don't have kids that even go to this school, so why do I care?
Yeah, but
well, it still ultimately affects your property taxes. If you ever want to, if you have an empty nest and you want to downsize your home, you want to sell your house, you probably think it's worth $1 million. But if you want to sell it on the market, you're not going to get anywhere near that amount if the community is not supported and there's no demand to come and live in this community. Okay, I know your name is Mary, I heard you say that.
My question goes in connection with the housing market.
Okay.
We have here in Florissant so many rentals because people are not really selling them. I guess they think that they can bring money in for their new payment or whatever. All of these houses are not kept up to the standard that they were when they were owned. Is there anything being done to address that?
Well, there has been an ordinance that was passed several years ago. It's called A&R. Unfortunately, and it deals with rental homes. Unfortunately, when our property values were a lot less in the past, a lot of investors came and started buying up real estate. And they were just kind of waiting things out to see, if the property values were going to increase. Unfortunately, they might be in California or somewhere other than the St. Louis area. They're not maintaining the homes like they should. So we passed the A&R ordinance to make sure that if you're going to try to rent these homes out, there's certain standards that you have to make. There's classes that you have to attend. And if you are not going to meet these standards, then you can't rent out homes in the Florissant area. And that's been pretty effective, I believe. However, it has not been done without a fight. The St. Louis Realtors Association believes that the Florissant is discriminating against people by making homeowners, before they rent to other people, go through this class. And the only thing we're trying to do is make sure that, you know, your gutters aren't falling down, and you're cutting your grass, and that, you know, if you've got paint peeling, that all of these things are being maintained and that they're fixed. The other thing is if you see a house that is deteriorating and nobody's doing any work, you have to say something. You have to say it. You can't just assume that your council person or I'm sorry, I can't even think of her name right.
Public Works.
Yeah, Public Works knows about it. You have to tell us, and you can always contact me. I give my cell phone number out. I'll give it out right now. It's 314-422-2050. If you see a house that's deteriorating, let me know, and we'll make sure that code enforcement goes by and cites this house so that they can fix it. Because if we don't see it, if we don't know about it, you know, then it can't get fixed, of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So, I'm hearing about the issues of education and ignoring your neighbor and your Florissant 5. There is a communication out about like the neighborhood watch or keeping track of what kind of crime is going on in Florissant.
Right.
So my concern is people, you know, have a bias against North County. And one of those biases includes level of crime and feeling safe in the neighborhood. So I'm wondering what kinds of, from this email that I get, most of the crimes that are happening in the Florissant area are car
Property
thefts
crimes, yeah.
and stolen property. But there haven't been, that I have seen in this last several months, murders or that sort of thing. When we first moved here, there were several murders, but I'm wondering how that issue comes up, because it hasn't been talked about here. I'm wondering if it's not talked about in council meetings or things like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, crime is definitely something that we all have to face. First off, I want to say that our Florissant Police Department does an excellent job. They are really responsive. They try hard. Right now, though, our problem is we don't have enough police officers. We are trying to hire new police officers. We have a lot of positions that are open right now, but candidates are just not applying, not just in Florissant, but in other areas. It's just not, I guess every workforce right now is having problems in attracting new employees, and the police department is no different. But you are absolutely correct in terms of, if you're on the neighborhood watch, you receive weekly emails as to crimes that are within the Florissant area. And most of them are property crimes. And some of these can be preventable. A lot of times in the wintertime, people are warming up their vehicles, they go back inside the house, they come back out when they're ready to go to work and their car is gone. And that crime of opportunity is something that's always prevalent in the wintertime, and you have to be able to prevent that. You gotta think, you know, you're not gonna make it to work if your car's not out there, of course. So, is it cold when you get into it? Yes, but you have to sit in there and warm it up yourself before you take off. The other thing is, you know, our youth, it's a challenge for them when they don't have things to do. That goes along with the pool that I was mentioning before. We want to make sure that our youth have plenty of activities that they can do so that they're not getting into these types of troubles and having these opportunities for crime and the like, so that our community can be better and we can combat the crime that do happen. And then lastly, just like with the code enforcement issues, if you see a crime happening, you have to say something and you have to report it. I know a lot of times people may be frightened if they see something happen, or they might be scared. The police department will always accept a report anonymously. You don't have to tell them your name. You don't have to say where you're calling from if you choose not to. But if someone who's a criminal who commits a crime believes that there is no repercussions, then they're just going to keep doing those things in our neighborhoods, which we need to prevent. And luckily, the city of Florissant has been blessed that we are not seeing a lot of murders like some of the surrounding areas in North County. However, Florissant receives the same bad rap as some of our surrounding cities that have deteriorated and are having that type of issue. So when they talk about North County, of course, we're in North County. So we get the same, the same type of opinion as all of our surrounding areas. But I see Florissant as being a leader in North County that can help improve the North County area as a whole and be a leader for our other surrounding communities. Because they ask us about our A&R rental program and how they can implement it. So, that's just another thing that I would like to add in terms of crime in the area. So,
Benjamin, did you have a question? Go ahead and ask it, nice and nice, sweetheart.
What should we do about climate change?
Oh my gosh!
I don't know if this is an appropriate question for the board.
You gotta solve it.
Unfortunately, the math and science were not my greatest things in school. So in regards to climate change, I'm sorry. That was a legitimate question.
It's a really good question.
It is a really good question.
I think it's a really good question, Ben, and that is a question, that does the city have things like recycling? Now, that's not going to change, totally change, but does the city get involved in discussions about carbon emissions and carbon footprint and all of that?
Well, we do have an environmental quality commission here in our city. Unfortunately, when COVID came about, a lot of our meetings and a lot of the initiatives that they tried to have were put on the back burner. But now, since COVID is subsiding and hopefully won't be as huge a problem as it was in the past, maybe they can be more active in our communities. But when it comes to recycling, unfortunately, recycling, even though we have a lot of people in the area recycling now, the countries that were typically taking all those materials are not taking them anymore. So they're just ending up in the landfills, unfortunately. So when it comes to climate change, we just have to be prepared to do our part and not waste, electricity, not waste gas, try to carpool when we need to. All of those things can help our environment here in the future. So great question.
I really want to commend you, Ben, because we need people like you, young people, to say to us old people, look what you're doing. And so I would say, Ben, keep asking the question, even if we don't have an answer. When you ask it, it makes us think of what we need to do so that you
not being intimidated.
Yeah. That was a great question. It's just above my pay grade. So that's the only thing I was saying. So I know we got some people who haven't had an opportunity to go to sir.
Yeah, Dave. I was just wondering, if you looked at the force of the police department? At one, I know I have been to forces. It was a crime that the policemen were the victim and more shells than he did. And now it's getting better. Now you're seeing these places where the police have got more lethal weapons than the people. They're coming up. They're all got M16s. And all they're doing is, all the people are trying to do is voice their opinion on the issue of the day. And here these cops are trying to overforce them.
Yeah, I want to make sure I got your question here correct. So you're asking if the police department is able to provide, I guess, more protection, and do they have weapons that equal some of the people who are committing crimes in the area? Is that what you're asking?
And are they overforcing themselves?
Are they overforcing? Oh, over-enforcement? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I will say being a police officer is definitely a difficult job. I don't know if I can be someone who can be critical of that job. I only do like the minor criminal law stuff, so I don't really deal into criticizing how people are charged and how the police officers may have come to their arrest. But I do know that everybody deserves the same rights as every other person within this country, so they all need to be treated fairly. Now, of course, some of our officers, just like any other realm of business or a type of employment, some people can be a little overzealous. They may have some bias that might be within them that can come out through their job. So we just have to make sure that the city of Florissant is hiring police officers who really fit our community and who can really serve our community. Because as I mentioned before, we have a very diverse community. So we have to have a diverse police department to reflect that. But as I mentioned, we just don't have enough right now. So hopefully that will change here in the future, and hopefully people will want to be police officers, because it is a very important part of our community. I'm sorry, the young man back there had a question, and I'm coming to you. Okay, Mary? What's your question, sir?
There wasn't a question, I just wanted to ask something about the ecology thing.
The what now?
Ecology stuff. Environmental ecology.
Oh, okay, ecology, okay. All right.
Yeah, we should try to minimize food waste, because when we throw food in the trash, it's sent to a landfill, and it can't break down into proper conditions. So because it can't break down into proper conditions, it creates methane, and methane is greenhouse gas, which heats up stuff.
Right.
So we minimize food waste. As a city, we can reduce the emissions.
Okay, awesome. What's your name? Calvin? Colin. See, Colin's a science guy. When you want to know the answer about our environment, you ask Colin. You'll ask me. My wife and I were just on vacation, and we were wasting food right and left because it was an all-inclusive place. So we were just eating. We would eat something, and you know what? I don't really like that, and we just got thrown away. So we wasted a lot of food. So Colin, thanks for telling me. I will know better next time.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, Miss Mary. Okay.
It's a good one, I promise.
All right.
Okay. So you know that you have plans of your own for the future. Mm-hmm. And if you would keep us in mind on some of your plans, if you think that we could help you. You see what we have. We have beautiful land out there. We have a communal garden in our county. 3 different churches work it. Okay. There's a possibility it could move and become a neighborhood community garden. Mm-hmm. You see what we have here to offer. Right now this room is being used as a sanctuary, but perhaps in a year or two it'll be back to a parish hall. We don't know. And we could use this on not a permanent basis, but maybe a one-time, two-time thing. So if you could keep us in mind, knowing what we have to offer, and this is about the amount of people that we work with all the time. Mm-hmm. So that would be great.
Oh yeah, I appreciate you volunteering your services to help with any events here in the future, because it's definitely needed. It takes a village to try to make sure that this community is going to be what we all envision it to be. We all seem to be like-minded and wanting to show some progress in this area, which I really appreciate. So again, thank you so much for offering your church's services to be a part of things in the future.
And I think that's a good way to end, because one of the things we talked about in the newly formed social ministries committee is we are small, and so we're not aiming to create some new program, but to partner with what's going on. And so we really appreciate both of you coming and telling us some of the things that are going on, so then we can be praying about and thinking, well, how can we work together for our neighborhood? So great morning. Thank you so much. And
thank you guys so much. I want to thank my wife for speaking first. She showed the intelligence part of it, our family. She's the intelligence on the muscle, I guess. But if anybody else, I gave out my cell phone number.
I got it for the news.
All right. Even if you see something outside of Ward 8, you can contact me about it, and I'll try to do what I can to resolve whatever that problem is. But again, it's 314-422-2050. And again, my name is Robert Parson. Okay? Thank you all so much.